What you allow repeats. There are moments when you feel like something was stolen from you. Not money, not objects, but energy, presence, peace. As if in silence, someone slipped through a crack in your soul and took a piece of your clarity. Sometimes it's a subtle comment, a demand disguised as care, a compliment with strings attached, and you can't quite explain what happened, but you know that you lost a little bit of yourself right there. Being manipulated isn't just falling into external traps, it's drifting away from yourself without even noticing. It's bending internally just to maintain a peace that was never yours. It's smiling while a part of you screams for truth, for boundaries, for freedom. Emotional manipulation doesn't arrive with warnings. It comes wearing familiar faces, with good intentions, with veiled promises, and that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because when the mind yields without knowing, the soul begins to go quiet. Seneca said that whoever is guided by passions is a slave, and maybe you're not bound by visible chains, but by unquestioned affections, by bonds that pull you gently, simply through the fear of disappointing, the fear of being judged, the fear of seeming selfish. But what's crueler than being kind to everyone, except yourself? Avoiding confrontation isn't always wisdom. Sometimes it's abandonment. Sometimes it's escape. Sometimes it's letting someone else draw your map and you just follow along. And so, a forced yes here, a complicit silence there, and before you know it, you're living a life where you're just a spectator, watching your own boundaries being crossed, without the courage to raise the voice that only you can use. The truth is simple but demands courage. Only those who are not whole in themselves can be manipulated. Those who still need external acceptance to validate their existence. Those who confuse compassion with submission and humility with absence. But the Stoic, on the contrary, is firm presence. He doesn't shout. He doesn't confront out of pride. He simply is. And by being whole, he becomes unshakable. Think of a door left open on a windy day. If you don't close it, even a breeze becomes a storm. So it is with your soul. When left wide open by fear, by haste, by emotional hunger, any word can pierce through. But when you know your center, feel your limits, and honor them with serenity, even the fiercest storm passes without taking anything from you. That is the invitation. To recognize the cracks, to close what doesn't nourish, and above all, to return to yourself. Because when you are whole, no argument can sway you, no emotion from others can drive you, and manipulation no longer has a place to live. 1. Self-knowledge is a shield. You can't be manipulated by something you've already recognized within yourself. There's a kind of vulnerability that doesn't come from the malice of others, but from your own absence. When you don't know exactly where you end, anyone can enter. When you don't know what hurts, what's missing, what drives you, anyone can touch it. And that's how manipulation begins. Not with shouting, but with soft touches on half-healed wounds. Not with commands, but with promises that echo your unspoken hunger. The manipulator doesn't invent your weaknesses. He simply discovers where you still don't see yourself, where your fear of rejection is stronger than your desire for truth, where the need for acceptance speaks louder than your sense of integrity. He doesn't need to be clever, just observant, because often you've already left the map on the table, in the subtext of your people-pleasing, in the exhaustion hidden behind a sure no problem. Epictetus taught that control begins within, that only those who hand over the key to their own center can become prisoners, and self-knowledge is that key. Not to protect you from the world, but so you no longer need to lose yourself in it. When you know what hurts you, it's easier to notice when someone tries to use that pain against you. When you recognize your hunger, you don't accept every crumb disguised as care. The path is simple and difficult. To observe yourself without judgment, without rushing, without needing to improve immediately. Just watch, like someone looking in the mirror for the first time with patience, What throws me off? What silences me? What forces me to smile when my chest is burning? The answers hurt, but they free. Self-knowledge is not vanity, it is defense. It's like learning to recognize the sound of your own breathing. When you know what your silence sounds like, it's harder to confuse it with someone else's noise. And from there, something changes. You stop being fertile ground for emotional invasions, because when the house is occupied, no one enters unnoticed. And what once was manipulation disguised as affection is now just an invitation you know how to decline with serenity, because finally you are home, inside yourself, and no one has the power to remove you. 2. Don't react, observe. Most manipulations fail when you stop offering emotional resistance. There is a silent power in those who don't rush, in those who listen without responding, in those who feel without exploding. Manipulation feeds on your urgency to react, your rush to correct, your compulsion to explain. It wants movement, your energy, your attention, your imbalance. But when you choose only to observe, something powerful happens. The game loses its meaning. You were taught to respond quickly, to justify everything, to defend yourself even when you weren't attacked. But the Stoic walks another path. He is not indifferent, he is present. And because of that, he doesn't give in to impulse. He doesn't offer resistance where there is only provocation. He sees the game and chooses not to play. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy," because when you respond in the same tone, you've already been captured. You're dancing to the other's rhythm. You've left your center. And everything you say after that is no longer about truth, but about survival. Pause is your shield. Silence is your sword. When you respond before feeling, you surrender. But when you breathe, observe, and calmly choose what comes next, you take back control. And no manipulator can resist the presence of someone who is whole. This is not about staying silent out of fear, but about cultivating the kind of presence that chooses when to speak. When you don't move, you hear more clearly. What once seemed urgent reveals itself as unnecessary. What seemed like an attack reveals itself as a cry for help. What seemed like guilt turns out to be a subtle attempt at control. Imagine a lake. When a stone is thrown, it doesn't push it away. It absorbs it. It allows the ripples to form and then returns to calm. It doesn't fight the stone. It simply continues being a lake. So should you. Be the space, not the reaction. When the manipulator finds no resistance, they lose power because they rely on your reaction to maintain control. And when you don't give it, when you just watch, feel, acknowledge, and don't rush, you move out of reach. You become a mirror, and mirrors don't react, they simply reveal. 3. Don't prove, just be. Manipulation only works where there's a need for validation. Have you ever found yourself trying to prove something? That you're enough, that you're good, that you're fair, that you're right? That effort, which seems natural, almost always comes from an old wound, a place where you were once questioned, underestimated, or ignored. And now, without noticing, you live trying to convince the world that you deserve to be here. But the more you try to prove, the further you stray from yourself. Because the energy of proving doesn't come from presence, it comes from absence, from a lack of grounding, from the doubt you still carry about yourself. And this is where manipulation finds its opening, in the hunger to be seen, in the fear of being forgotten, in the urgency to be understood. The Stoic lives by coherence, not approval. He doesn't seek to please, he seeks to align. Seneca said, "There is immense freedom in not caring about what doesn't depend on you." And other people's opinions rarely depend on you. Their interpretation rarely reflects who you truly are. When you act out of fear of being misunderstood, you stop living your truth. When you explain yourself constantly, you lose the breath that silence could have strengthened. When you try to convince, you've already lost. Because to convince is often to step onto a stage that doesn't belong to you. The practice is simple but powerful. Stay silent after being misunderstood. Let the other's interpretation exist without correcting it. Feel the restlessness, feel the urge to explain, feel the anxiety to be clear, and then choose not to follow any of them. Think of a mountain. It doesn't bend to the wind. It doesn't have to shout to affirm its existence. It simply is. firm, present, unshakable. You can also be that point of stillness, even when the world tries to bend you, even when words come distorted, even when someone else's silence sounds like judgment. Because in the end, you don't need to prove anything, you just need to be. And being with wholeness is what most deeply dissolves any attempt at control. Presence needs no applause. It sustains itself, even in silence, even alone, even misunderstood. 4. Choose your battles. Not every conflict deserves your energy. Not every invitation to drama must be accepted. Some provocations aren't challenges. They're traps. They're invitations disguised as dialogue. They're scenarios created just to pull you off balance. You've felt this before. Someone says something that seems innocent, but something inside you contracts. A phrase that triggers your ego, a critique that smells like advice, a tone that seems calm but carries venom. And once again, you find yourself reacting, entering someone else's field. But here's a secret that changes everything. You don't have to accept every battle. You can hear and not respond, feel and not move. Be present and still maintain distance. Choosing your battles is not weakness. It's emotional maturity. It's knowing where your energy is worth investing and where it would only feed chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, and that strength is silent. It's the kind of power that doesn't try to dominate anyone. It simply refuses to be pulled into noise. It's selective presence, purposeful attention, the discernment to realize, this conflict is not mine. Many manipulators live off reactions. They plant words to harvest drama. They throw doubt to see where you wobble. But when you don't give them anything, when you don't react, when you choose silence as your answer, something breaks. The game falls apart. The cycle is interrupted. And yes, silence may feel uncomfortable at first. You might feel like you're losing, like you're being passive. But with time, you'll realize that's exactly where true strength lives. In the ability to remain whole, even when everything around you is trying to tear you apart. Think of a warrior. He walks through a valley and the enemy screams, taunts, insults, but he doesn't draw his sword. He looks, breathes, and continues walking because he knows this battle isn't worthy. This fight won't make him stronger, just more tired. And the real war is still ahead. So should you. Don't enter where there is no meaning. Don't fight where there is no purpose. Don't lose yourself just to prove you're right, because sometimes the greatest power is continuing to walk forward while others are still shouting alone. 5. Withdraw the power of others' emotions. The manipulator doesn't use force. They use your reaction. Often control isn't obvious. It doesn't come through commands, but through strategic sensitivity. The manipulator doesn't need to raise their voice. They just need to push the right button, the one that activates your anger, your guilt, your fear, and once activated, you move, you react, you explain, you justify, you mold yourself. But here's the truth. It's not the other who controls you. It's your own reaction that abandons you. When you hand over your serenity to someone else's emotion, you also hand over your autonomy. You begin to live in response to what others feel, to what they project, to what they want. And over time, you forget what's truly yours, what's real, what's whole. You begin to adapt, to distort, to disconnect. Epictetus taught, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgment about them. The same goes for feelings. The other may be in a rage, they may be hurting, they may be manipulating, but it only harms you if you decide their pain is yours to carry. Withdrawing the power of others' emotions is not coldness, it's maturity. It's realizing, this belongs to them, not to me. This is their internal storm, and I can witness it without getting wet. I can listen without absorbing. I can be present without losing myself. Imagine someone trying to push you, but you're no longer there. You've taken a step to the side. You're still present, but out of reach. You see the attempt, you see the move, but you don't offer yourself as a target. And in that moment, the force dissolves into thin air. You're not obligated to respond to someone's emotion with your own. You can feel everything and still choose not to act on it. And that choice is liberating because it brings you back, restores your center, reminds you that no power is greater than being whole when everything else tries to pull you apart. When you refuse to dance to a song you didn't choose, you change the frequency. You stop being a target and become presence. And manipulation, which only exists in the realm of reaction, loses the fuel it once had. Because now, there's no longer a hook to hang on to. Manipulation ends where your awareness begins. There is no need to shout, no need to fight, no need to win, because the true end of manipulation doesn't lie in defeating the other. It lies in no longer being led by them. When you return to your own center, when your presence becomes stronger than your need to please, when your listening becomes steadier than your urge to react, something breaks. And that something is the cycle. You don't need ready-made answers, nor sharp defenses. You only need awareness. Awareness of what you feel, of what throws you off balance, of what silences you, and above all, of what drags you away from yourself. This awareness is not loud. It is subtle, almost imperceptible. But when it grows, no one can pull you anymore. The Stoics didn't teach how to defeat others. They taught how to conquer oneself, because it is within, and only within, that the real battle takes place. And it is also there that true peace is born. When you realize that you don't need to be accepted, understood, or justified, you become free. Manipulation feeds on absence, on haste, on open wounds. But when you are present, whole, inhabiting each word and each choice with intention, there are no more openings, no more empty space for the other to enter. You become a space closed from within, not out of fear, but out of presence. Think of a stone temple in the middle of the desert. The wind blows, the sand rises, the sun scorches, but it stands. It does not respond to the weather. It does not mold itself to its surroundings. It endures, because the sacred does not need to prove itself. It simply is. You are that temple, and from now on, your peace is no longer for sale. Your reaction is no longer available. Your energy will no longer be diverted, because you have finally realized what protects you is not the strength with which you resist, it is the depth with which you know yourself, and that depth no one can manipulate.